The room was alive with tension as the lights blazed down on the polished oak table. Clint Eastwood, a man whose legendary presence had shaped decades of Hollywood, sat composed but firm, his weathered face betraying nothing. Across from him sat the reporter, a young, sharp-eyed woman named Claire Daniels who had made a career of unearthing secrets and creating controversies. She wasn't here for a friendly chat. She was here to make headlines. Behind Clint, standing silently but unmistakably, was Barron Trump. At 19, he towered over most people, his piercing blue eyes watching the room with a maturity far beyond his years. Barron's father, now the 47th President of the United States, had entrusted Clint with a role not publicly known as a guiding mentor to his youngest son. The interview began with sharp, cutting questions, each designed to provoke. Claire leaned forward, her tone icy. "Mr. Eastwood, you've been described as outdated, irrelevant. Why cling to a spotlight that no longer shines for you?" Clint's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Barron spoke. His voice was calm, yet his words carried weight. Sometimes the brightest lights are those people fail to see. Careful not to miss them, Claire wasn't expecting Barron to intervene. Her pen paused mid-sentence, and for a moment she faltered. "I didn't realize you were part of this discussion, Barron," she said, attempting to regain control. "I'm not," Barron replied smoothly, "but when someone disrespects a man who stood the test of time, it's hard to stay silent." Clint placed a hand on Barron's shoulder, a silent signal to let him handle it. "The boy's got a point," Clint said, his gravelly voice breaking the tension. "Let's talk about the real story here, not some headline you're fishing for." But Claire wasn't about to let the moment slip. "You talk about respect, Barron, yet your father's presidency has been polarizing. What makes you think you can speak on matters of legacy and integrity?" Barron's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. "I speak because I've lived it," he said simply, "and because I've learned from people like Clint, who've earned their place in history not by tearing others down, but by standing tall in their truth." Claire leaned back, studying him. The young Trump wasn't just a shadow of his father. He was something else entirely. As the interview progressed, Claire shifted her focus, determined to expose what she believed were hidden flaws. "Mr. Eastwood, there are rumors that you've used your influence to shield the Trump family. Care to comment?" Clint's eyes darkened. "Rumors are like shadows, empty until you give them light. I don't deal in gossip, ma'am." But Claire wasn't done. "And Barron, what about you? Living in the shadow of your father's presidency can't be easy. How do you cope with being seen as just Donald Trump's son?" The room fell silent. For the first time, Barron's composure cracked. His voice, steady but filled with emotion, cut through the air. "I'm more than my last name, and people like Clint have shown me that legacies aren't given, they're earned. You want a headline? Write this. Respect isn't inherited. It's proven." The room felt heavy, the weight of Barron's words settling like a storm about to break. Claire's hand trembled slightly as she scribbled notes. The clock on the wall ticked louder than ever. Something was shifting, and everyone in the room could feel it. The interview took a darker turn. Claire Daniels, emboldened by the pressure to deliver a career-defining scoop, leaned forward, her voice sharp and unrelenting. "Clint, you've been described as the protector of a controversial family. Is that a title you're proud of, or do you see it as a burden?" Clint's face remained stoic, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, a pain buried deep within. Before he could answer, Barron's voice rang out again, calm but firm. "Is it controversial to stand by the people you care about, or is it just easier to attack what you don't understand?" Claire raised an eyebrow. "So you admit there's controversy, Barron?" He didn't hesitate. "The controversy isn't in the truth. It's in how people twist it. Clint's loyalty isn't a burden. It's a testament to his character." The tension in the room grew unbearable. Even the security guard stationed at the doors shifted uneasily. For the first time, Claire seemed to falter. The young man in front of her wasn't just defending Clint. He was dismantling her every attempt to provoke. But Claire wasn't done. She was just getting started. As the cameras rolled, Claire pulled out a file from her bag, its edges frayed from years of handling. "Mr. Eastwood," she began, her voice cold, "there are whispers about an incident from your past, a decision that may have jeopardized lives. Care to comment?" Clint's jaw tightened. The room fell silent as the air grew thick with anticipation. Barron glanced at Clint, his usually composed Godfather suddenly vulnerable. "That's enough," Barron said, his voice low but commanding. Claire smirked. "What's wrong, Barron?" "Afraid the truth will tarnish your perfect image of him." Barron stood, his towering frame casting a shadow over the room. "The truth doesn't scare me," he said, "but your obsession with tearing people down does. You want a story? How about the one where Clint saved my life? Twice." The room froze. Claire blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "Saved your life?" she repeated, her tone skeptical. "Yes," Barron said, his voice cracking with emotion. "But you don't care about that, do you? You'd rather dig up old wounds than celebrate the man who's been my anchor in a world that's anything but steady." The weight of Barron's words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, Claire was silent, her confidence shaken. "What do you mean, Clint saved your life?" she finally asked, her voice softer now. Barron's gaze hardened, but there was a glimmer of pain in his eyes. "When my father was on the campaign trail, there was an incident. A credible threat was made against me. Clint was the one who stepped in. He protected me when no one else could." Claire's pen hovered over her notepad, her hands trembling slightly. "Why hasn't this story ever been told?" "Because Clint doesn't seek praise," Barron said. "He doesn't need the world's validation. He just does what's right, even when no one's watching." Clint, who had remained silent, finally spoke. "I'm no hero, Barron. I just did what anyone would do." Barron shook his head. "Not anyone. Only someone like you." The room was silent except for the faint hum of the recording equipment. Claire looked down, her usual confidence crumbling. For the first time, she seemed to realize the depth of the story unfolding before her. The tension in the room was almost unbearable as Barron's voice broke the silence again. "You want the truth, Claire? Here it is. When I was 15, there was a credible threat against my life during my father's campaign rally in Texas. It wasn't just a scare. It was real. And Clint Eastwood was the one who stepped in when everything went wrong." Claire's pen hovered, but her hand trembled. "What happened?" she whispered, her curiosity overtaking her initial agenda. Barron's eyes glazed over, as if reliving the moment. "I was backstage, waiting to meet my father. Suddenly, security alarms went off, and there was chaos. A man armed with a weapon got through the barriers. My security froze. Clint didn't." The room fell into an eerie stillness. Clint, sitting silently, clenched his jaw. "I did what anyone with experience would do," he said, his voice steady but low. "I acted. That's all." Barron's voice cracked. "You didn't just act. You risked your life for me. You saved me. And that's why I won't sit here and let anyone tear you down." The room remained eerily silent, the weight of Barron's words pressing down on everyone present. Even Claire Daniels, who had entered the interview with a razor-sharp confidence, found herself momentarily speechless. She had prepared for deflections, for calculated answers, but not for this, a raw, unfiltered truth that had shattered her preconceived notions. Clint Eastwood, ever composed, leaned back in his chair, his sharp gaze resting on Barron for a moment before turning back to Claire. "You came looking for a scandal," he said, his voice steady but firm. "But what you found is something you can't spin." Claire swallowed, her fingers tightening around her pen. "I wasn't trying to twist the truth," she said, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Barron met her gaze, his tone unwavering. "Then tell the real story. Tell people about the man who didn't hesitate when my life was on the line. Tell them about the values Clint stands for: loyalty, integrity, courage. Or is that not the kind of story that gets clicks?" Claire hesitated. The young Trump wasn't just defending Clint. He was forcing her to confront her own intentions. She had built her career on uncovering hidden truths, but now she was faced with one she hadn't expected. She took a slow breath. "If that's the truth," she said carefully, "then why has it been buried for so long? Why hasn't anyone in your family spoken about it?" Clint answered before Barron could. "Because real heroes don't ask for recognition," he said simply. "They do what's right, whether the cameras are rolling or not." Barron nodded. Clint didn't step in that night for a headline. He did it because that's who he is. And that's why I won't sit back and let you or anyone else try to rewrite his story. The tension in the room had shifted. Claire, who had entered with the intent of exposing flaws, now found herself facing something far more compelling, an undeniable truth, spoken with such sincerity that it left no room for manipulation. She closed her notebook slowly, choosing her next words carefully. "Maybe," she said, "this is the story people need to hear." Barron didn't react, but Clint offered the faintest of smiles. "Then do it justice." The interview wasn't over yet, but the dynamic had shifted entirely. What had begun as an attempt to tear down a legend had transformed into something else, a testament to the power of truth, loyalty, and the kind of quiet heroism that didn't seek the spotlight, but deserved it all the same. The cameras kept rolling, but the energy in the room had completely changed. Claire Daniels, who had walked in with the intention of dismantling Clint Eastwood's legacy, now found herself sitting across from two men who had just turned the entire narrative on its head. She had come looking for flaws, for cracks in the foundation of loyalty, but instead, she had uncovered something rare, an unbreakable bond built on respect, courage, and sacrifice. She tapped her pen lightly on the table, her voice softer now. "Barron, if you could say one thing to Clint right now, something the world should hear, what would it be?" Barron turned toward Clint, his piercing blue eyes reflecting something deeper than admiration. It was gratitude, something words could barely contain. He took a steady breath before speaking. "Thank you for everything, for standing by me when I didn't even realize I needed it, for showing me that being a man isn't about power, it's about principle. You never asked for anything in return, but if I have the chance to make the world see you for who you truly are, I'll take it." Clint, usually a man of few words, swallowed hard. He glanced at Barron, a flicker of emotion crossing his rugged face. "You don't have to thank me, kid," he said, his voice low but steady. "I did what was right. That's all." Claire watched the exchange, realizing that for the first time in her career, she wasn't just documenting a story. She was witnessing history. She set her notebook aside and leaned forward slightly. "Then let the world see it," she said. "The real story. Not the one I plan to tell, but the one that deserves to be told." The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was powerful. A shift had occurred, one that neither Barron nor Clint had anticipated. Claire wasn't just acknowledging their truth. She was ready to share it. As the interview wrapped up, the cameras powered down, and the crew began packing up their equipment. Claire, still holding her notepad, looked at Barron one last time. "This changes things," she admitted. Barron gave a small nod. "Good." Clint rose from his chair, placing a firm hand on Barron's shoulder. "Let's get out of here, kid." As they exited the room together, the weight of the moment settled over them. The world would soon hear the truth about loyalty, about sacrifice, about the bond that no headline could twist. And for the first time, Barron wasn't just seen as Donald Trump's son. He was something more. And Clint Eastwood? He wasn't just a Hollywood icon. He was a legend whose greatest role wasn't on a movie screen. It was the one he played in real life. And this time, the world would know.